I want to quickly talk to you about how to write a research proposal. And it's important to understand that when you are writing a research proposal, you got to really write it with the end user or the end reader in mind. Okay. So the tone, the vision that you have throughout the research proposal has to actually be geared towards all your end users, your end readers. Okay. But let me first define for you what a research proposal is and what it's not, because a research proposal is a very specific document. Okay, this is actually a formal academic document that really outlines your research project and requests support for that project. Okay, either by funding or agreeing to supervise your research. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you have to write a research proposal only in school. No, you can write a research proposal for your startup. You can write a research proposal for your established business. It just means that it has a certain tone, a certain vision. Okay. So the main objective of a research proposal is to actually explain what you are planning to research and while it's worth researching in the first place, right? If you want other readers to other people to be interested in your research, you got to really tell them why they got to be interested in the first place. Okay, this is really important from what I call flexibility point of view. So that's really what it is. Okay, of course, no two research proposals are identical. In fact, those can vary greatly depending on the level of study you are at, or the level of research you are at, or the level of operational stage you are at, your field, your niche, your economic sector, or the exact nature of your projects. Okay, so this is kind of important. Now, how long should a research proposal be? It really depends. Usually, what my team and I have seen in the industry is that sometimes you have anywhere from 10 to 25 pages long. Now, some industries and some investors, some stakeholders, some regulators might want to have longer, okay, a longer research proposal. So it really depends on the goal you're trying to reach and the kind of funding, if any, you are seeking from the research proposal. Okay, this is really important. So if you are seeking funding, you have to really follow through the specifics that the stakeholder or the funding agency has put in place. So let me just walk you through now how to write a research proposal. The first thing you want to do here is to write an introduction to present the subject of your research, right? You want to really acquaint your readers. You want to really walk them through the main topic you are going to discuss, okay? It's important. So what's the research problem? Who is this problem relevant to? So we're speaking about the stakeholders. It can be the general society, like everybody. It can be fellow researchers. It can be specialized professionals. It can be your competitors, or let's just say economic actors in a specific sector, for instance, okay? And what's currently known about the problem and what key pieces are missing from the current state of knowledge, right? So if you are actually highlighting a pain point, you got to really understand, you got to really explain to the reader, to the research proposal reader, what's known about the pain point, what's known, and what has been done about it. And why should anyone care about the potential outcomes? And this has to do a lot about the stakeholders that will find your research proposal important. If you're being funded from a granting agency, like if you're looking for a grant, for instance, then you want to make sure that you tell the grantor, the granting agency, why funding your research proposal is actually really important. Okay, so bottom line is you want to really explain the problem, who it's relevant to, what's currently known, and why should anyone care at all. So it's all about, I mean, actually incentivizing others to rate your research proposal. That's number one. Number one, write an introduction to present actually the subject of your research proposal. Number two, you want to explain the context and background of the whole thing. Okay, so whether or not you'll need this section depends on how detailed your proposal is. So if a research problem at hand is particularly complicated or advanced, it's usually best to add this section, and it can be usually called background and significance or rationale. So the whole idea here is what? You want to explain anything about your research or topic further to really contextualize the whole conversation for potential readers, okay? So you want to describe the broader area of research that your project fits into. You want to focus on the gaps in existing studies and explain the need to fill those gaps. And again, those have to go back to the specific geographies, the specific psychographics, the specific stakeholders that you want to really you want to direct that research proposal to. And you want to show how your research will build upon existing knowledge because you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're trying to complement it. You're trying to really bring new stuff to the fore. So if you want to write a research proposal, a winning research proposal, whether you're doing it for a nonprofit or for a profit company, you need to provide a detailed literature review because see, remember, your problem, I mean, no problem, the problem you are actually solving in your research proposal or the problem you are investigating is not new, right? If it's new, say it. But if it's not new, that means that there has been some literature around it before you start addressing it, okay? So you have to provide that so that the readers know that you've done research, that you know what you're talking about, okay? So it's important. So the literature review section is in essence a mini dissertation, okay? So it has to follow a logical progression and put forward the argument for your study in relation to existing research. Describe and summarize what has already been discussed and demonstrate that your research goes beyond that, right? You're not trying to reinvent the wheel or you're not trying to really rehash what has been done before. So this is important. So you want to really cite, so there is actually a structure that researchers actually follow when writing a research proposal. And that's actually the 5 C's. So you want to cite directly from the sources to avoid digressions and drifting away from the actual literature. You want to compare different theories or arguments, methodologies, and findings. You want to contrast the approach discussed a little earlier. You want to critique the research of the past, okay? Don't shy away from pointing out inaccuracies, mutually exclusive findings, or controversies, okay? At the same time, give credit where it's due, right? It's not about just coming and actually just criticizing everything. No, you want to really be objective here. And the last C is connect. So you want to connect the whole of the literature review to your own project, okay? So we're speaking about cite, compare, contrast, critique, and connect. So when I say connect, you got to really ask yourself, are you basing your assumptions on any previous findings or are you creating something new? Okay. So if your goal is to confront, challenge, or even debunk certain pieces of research, think about the best way to approach that in your research. Next thing you want to do is if you want to write a winning proposal, you got to list your key goals and objectives. Okay, this is important from a flexibility point of view, but also from a direction point of view. You want to really direct. You want to really orient your research so that the readers know what you're talking about and where you're going. Okay, so basically, you want to. The key aspect here is actually distinguish between the three: the aim, the objective, and the research question. So aims describe what you want to achieve. An aim is actually stated in a broad term. Objectives are the specific, measurable outputs you need to produce in order to achieve your aim. There are usually multiple objectives associated with a single aim. By the way, when I say aim, it can be a goal too, okay? And questions are a slightly more specific way to formulate your objectives. In essence, very similar in meaning, just slightly different in format, okay? So something to really think about. And so one thing I want to say here is that when we talk about aim or we talk about goals, there is something you will hear in research or just, let's just say in general, that's the 5 C's, okay? I mean the 5 C's, not the 5 C's, but the SMART. The 5 C's I already talked about that, but then you have the SMART. Those goals that you have must be SMART. They must be specific. they must be measurable, they must be achievable, they must be relevant, and they must be time bound. Next, you want to outline the research methods and design, okay? So the grant decision makers already know what you are trying to achieve and have a general idea about how you are planning to achieve that. So you want to prove to them here that you are well equipped both in terms of your skills and resources to conduct the research, okay? So bottom line is you want to convince the reader that your methods are adequate and appropriate for the specific aim that you actually have, okay? So the research type can be qualitative or quantitative. You also want to think about whether you have a descriptive, correlational, or experimental sort of process. The population and sample, you have to describe that. The data collection, the data analysis, the operational issues that you might have. Okay, this is really important from a flexibility point of view. Next, you also want to think about, you want to discuss ethical considerations. This section is actually optional, but it's always good to really include that so your readers know that you have actually covered a lot. Okay, so basically, if there are any ethical issues that your readers, or let's just say key stakeholders, have to consider, you want to really put that. Okay, you want to put that, especially when it comes to granularity, but also comprehensiveness. Next, you want to present preliminary or desired implications and contribution to knowledge. So when I say contribution to knowledge here, what I'm speaking about is that you are actually, your research should add to existing knowledge. Your research is not rehashing what has already been done. Your research is not just critiquing what has been done. No, you are also adding value. Okay, so everything will be about boring technicalities if you're not able to present something fresh. In other words, you need to describe the implications of your research. Okay, now let me explain further. How can your research challenge the current underlying assumptions on the subject matter? That's like practical, concrete contribution you are bringing to the table here. How can your research inform future research, and what new areas of research can it propel? What will the influence of your research be on policy decisions? What sorts of individuals, organizations, or other entities can your research benefit? And what will be improved and optimized on the basis of your research? So those are important elements to really think about from a flexibility point of view, okay? And that's going to help you actually have a clear answer to, for instance, if you want to reiterate the gaps in the current state of knowledge, that at least you have a good context, a good foundation to do so. You can also show how you will contribute to a new understanding of certain problems or even a scientific breakthrough. Let's say you are in an economic sector that's actually moving fast in terms of technological advancements. In that way, you have to provide enough context to the reader to understand that, hey, listen, your research is actually tackling not just existing problems, but also anticipating upcoming ones, okay? And you also want to clearly show how your findings can be acted upon and what feasible change those actions will bring about. That's how you add value to the whole conversations, by the way. And you also need to detail your budget and funding requirements, okay? Things like operational cost, materials, equipment, access to labs, any software you might need, your travel cost, including transportation, accommodation, and living cost, the staff, okay? If you need actually a human assistance to help you carry out your research, you have to pay them, right? And also allowance. So it's one of those things where allowance for yourself, okay? You have to live. You got to really maintain a certain lifestyle to be able to conduct the research successfully. So you also need to provide a timetable. So if you want to write a winning research proposal, having a timetable is going to help you big time, because then you are able to quantify everything. It's important for key stakeholders to know that they're because see, when they're granting you or money, when they're giving you money, it's not a donation, it's an investment. So if they know that your research will come out in 6 months, in 9 months, or 3 months, for instance, they will actually have to incorporate that in their own like in their own internal sort of analysis or whatever trains they have. Okay, so certain grant schemes come with predetermined timetables. For example, placements offered for 3, 6, or 9 months. And in such cases, there is no need for a very detailed timeline. All you need to do is to actually convince the granting organization, the grantor, that the period of time that for which you'll be receiving funding is actually enough, okay, for you to complete the project. So that means you have to really insist on the qualitative aspects of things, but also the quantitative aspects. So qualitatively and quantitatively. The whole idea here is to present a winning case, a convincing case, okay, a well structured case that you know what you're talking about and that you know what you're doing and that you will get to the end, you will get to the results that you actually promise your key stakeholders. So when you are writing a proposal for a standalone project, detailing a timeline, okay, can help support your budget. The most common format is a table, okay? Divide your research, for example, into stages, list, and bullet points. What actions you will need to take at each stage, and you want to list rough deadlines actually. So this is kind of important. It's especially when it comes to getting to the bottom line in a pretty specific, in a pretty specific manner. And the more specific you are, the better, because your grantors, your like your stakeholders, want to know that their money will be well spent. And if you are writing a research proposal for a startup, for a nonprofit, for a for-profit established company, you want to really follow that sort of timeline. So if you want to write a winning research proposal, you have to really also provide context. And what I mean by context is that you want to end with a list of citations, okay? And so this section here is really self-explanatory because you want to really provide enough substantiate. You want to substantiate enough evidence, enough substantiation that what you're putting forward does actually make sense, okay? So you need to cite the sources you are referring to, no matter how harshly critical you are of some of those, because you want your grantors you want to give them the chance to go and read those sources too, if they want to. Okay, so citations in research proposals can either be included in the form of references, which is really cool. So only the pieces of literature you actually cited, or I get it, bibliography. So everything that informed your proposal. Okay, so either references or bibliography. Okay, and one thing I want to say here is that when it comes to research proposals overall, the correct format will depend on your industry. It will depend also on the institution you're applying to. Okay, so make sure that you check the format with that institution before, or you can even consult with your supervisor. Okay, or even you. The bottom line is you want to get guidance. Okay, about the format that's actually preferred by the institution. So the same goes for the style of referencing. Most US universities use APA or Chicago style, but each has its own set of rules and preferences. So you want to double check with a list of guidelines on their website. And when in doubt, reach out to like a mentor or the head of the department you are wishing to work with. It really depends on whether you're willing to work with an institution, or you are actually submitting your research proposal to, let's say, to a granting organization, for instance. Okay, so overall, what I just spoke about in today's conversation here is that, when you think about a typical research proposal, you want to have an introduction, context and background, literature review, aims and objectives or research questions, methods and design, ethical considerations, contribution to knowledge or implications, budget, timetable, and citations. So, in closing today's conversation, I just talked to you about how to write a winning research proposal, either for your startup, for your nonprofit or your established small businesses, your small business. Okay. So I really defined for you what a research proposal is and the different steps to take when writing one. Thank you so much. God bless you. I will see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.